Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, everybody. This is the Travelers Podcast. I'm Brother Ali. Thank you for being here yet again. Again. I know how I said it. I'm rocking with that. You're here again. That's how Nardwar says it. You know what I'm saying? So, again. Don't you ever in your life say anything against my mother. In any case, Toni Blackman is on the podcast this week. Toni Blackman is one of the human beings that just her living and being and existing and doing her work and doing her thing on this earth makes me feel less alone and less crazy. And she gives me hope and she reminds me of everything that I love and care about. And it's been that way for a minute. I've known Toni for probably 10 years. And I've always known Toni as the spokesperson for the cipher. Like what Jay-Z is for hustling and what Bob Marley is for Rastafari. That's what Toni Blackman is for the wisdom of the cipher and the universal meaning of the cipher. Toni came up in New York and went to college at Howard University in DC. And she was an MC. She's always been an MC. And she was dating a really dope MC at that time and got tired of being known as his girlfriend and really wanted to create a space where she could develop her own skills, develop her own confidence. So she initially created something called Freestyle Fellowship, which was a place for people to get together, not even knowing that Freestyle Fellowship was already a whole movement on the West Coast. So she changed the name because she's not a biter. We're not biters. We don't come from that. We're originators. You know what I'm saying? So she changed the name to Freestyle Union and then eventually even developed something called Rap Like a Girl, Rhyme Like a Girl, where she used the wisdom of the cipher to bring women together, to build confidence and to build skill and to build ability, but also ended up learning how much wisdom really is in being in a circle and allowing the inspiration of the creator to move us and to really be in the moment together and the amazing healing power, humanizing power, the potential for growth and for development and for imagination and for all of this amazing stuff that really comes from the cipher. And so Toni became an ambassador and she went to countless countries around the world as an ambassador with the wisdom of the cipher. So Toni and I have crossed paths in different cities over the years, and she's somebody that I've always been immensely inspired by. Also, she's just a really dope MC. She's really an incredible freestyler. You don't freestyle for that long with that type of spirit and that type of wisdom and energy in that many different environments and not become a master. Like she is absolutely a master. But then recently, during the course of the pandemic, I started to realize Toni moved to Senegal, which is a place that I am deeply connected to. My spiritual teacher lives in the Gambia, West Africa, which is the Gambia is kind of like inside of Senegal. So not only did Toni move to Senegal during this time, but she also now is identifying fully as a Muslim. There are some people that in the Muslim community, they're so close to us that we claim them. And that's even a category within Islam is like people whose hearts are very near to Islam. And she's always been that way, but now she's outwardly identifying as a Muslim. So it's like this person that I already thought that I couldn't love and appreciate and admire anymore. Now we just even have these extra things in common. So it was really beautiful to be able to catch up with Toni. Both of our internet is a problem. So I don't know, Brendan BK1 does a great job editing these episodes. So you probably won't hear it, but we were dealing with a little bit of a time lag with the internet. But I'm so very happy to be able to have had this conversation and to share it with you, with our dear sister, Toni Blackman. We're brought to you, as always, by the Zakat Foundation and by BetterHelp online therapy platform. Enjoy this episode of the Travelers Podcast. Nobody talks about the cipher like you. Obviously it's something that we all care so much about. It's like such a big, such a big, part of the culture, part of the art form, you know.
Yeah.
And also always these connections to Islam, like, the zero in Arabic is zephyr. So like even the connection
Right.
there. But I don't know if I've ever heard anybody articulate it not only in language, but also in being, you know.
Right.
And so for the people that are listening, I've heard it. I've been a part of it. I've been in your cipher. You know what I'm saying? I consider
Mhm.
myself always moving around in your cipher. But I'm wondering if you could share, like, with the people that are listening,
Yeah.
some of the wisdom of the cipher.
Well, I know like my the book will come out this year finally. I'm working with a small publisher. It's God's will. Come on now, we'll see. But I've been trying to get this book out for some time. But everything's finished. So the in the site in the book I define it based on years of participating, but also paying attention to other hip hop heads. And I when I confirmed my definition with Harry Allen, the media assassin from Public Enemy, for endorsement, and then Popmaster Fable and added some from Rocksteady, added his 2 cents into it. But the cipher is the circle. It's completion of thought. It's giving and exchanging energy, information, and ideas. It is, the circle's never ending. And like Popmaster Fable says, we've been ciphering for centuries. We dance in circles, we pray in circles, ciphers, we eat in circles, ciphers, we drum in them. And so the cipher is nothing new. It is zero and the sum of all things at the same time. And I like to say that the cipher is the closest thing to a hip hop prayer because it's a space where we come to get open, and the safer the space is, the more open we get. And I like to joke that even it becomes a spiritual container even for the agnostic folks who don't believe, because it's a space where you literally can expand and blossom, like your heart can open up like a flower in the cipher. And yes, that can happen with dirty, grimy Wu-Tang mob deep beats. You can get open, and that's what music does, that's what
Absolutely.
rhythms do. And too often we
Right.
underestimate the power of rhythm, and so we unconsciously misuse it. In a cipher that has structure to it, it becomes a training ground for you to harness that power and to harness your own gifts, and for you to realize and connect to the power that's greater than you. Maybe you call that power the most high or the source, whatever you reference it as. Because when you truly get open, it's not you. There is some type of
Hmm.
energy moving
That's
through
right.
you, but it is
That's
not
right.
you. And what I love doing the cipher with young people is because it teaches them how to listen to one another, to acknowledge each other, and to be reminded that we're here. I got you, you got me. If we practice, don't let the vibe drop, don't let the vibe drop, don't let the vibe drop. That puts you in the habit of knowing someone always is going to catch you. Someone always is going to have your back.
Right.
And then having intergenerational ciphers keeps cats humble, right? Because it's you sometimes you're hot, sometimes you're not. And there's always going to be
Right. That's right.
somebody that comes in to hotter than you today, and it might just be that 15-year-old who reads the dictionary before he goes to bed.
Yeah, it's so beautiful that, cipher is like Zephyr. It's also safer. Like, there's so many words that are so close, that are in that kind of like family of phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that, you talk about, like, each of us feels like a drop in the ocean, but we're also the ocean in a drop. You know what I mean? The way that
Mm-hmm.
that is both contained but also free, like, uncontained, is like completely free, but it's also within a specific container. And the way that each of us is communing with the source, together, that we're also channeling and filtering that through each other. That if somebody goes into a space, that is off-putting to someone else, you automatically feel that. So there's like a self-correction there. Like, we were talking about this idea of, like, untribing or pushing people out. When there really is a cipher energy, it's not necessary to do that, because a person will feel that. And if a
Mm-hmm.
person isn't self-aware, or they're not communing and fellowshipping and vibing with others, others will notice that, and it really is like a
Yes.
self-regulating thing that doesn't
Yes.
require a facilitator. Like you start the cipher, and sometimes you may provide
Yes.
some direction, but I've seen you in spaces where it's like, that the communal, like the spirit, will self-correct, it'll
Mhm.
purify, it'll refine, it'll elevate. It always pulls up. Like you never see
Yes.
that pull down. And like
Yeah.
Resma Menakem, the incredible racial trauma expert, he always says that like real culture isn't destructive. Like anytime we see
Right.
group behavior that's destructive, like that's unprocessed trauma. That's not culture. And you see that
Right.
in the cipher, so like it's such an embodied thing that you start to see that, like,
Mhm.
as a group, we're always, as long as we're engaged and as long as we're doing this, we're always going to pull up. We're never going to push down, and we're never going to push out.
Right. Right, right. Yeah. That is so true. And that's one of the things that it keeps me doing the work, and I'm absolutely committed to it. And the cipher has evolved to the point where I figured out, oh, I don't just use this for rap. I use spoken word, and I started using it with teachers and moving it into corporate settings and working with when the presidential election was happening and they were trying to get young people to run for office. I got booked to do the session in Philly with the young folks running for office, because the if you run the cipher the right way, it allows any and everyone to get open. And so people who've never spit poetry
Hmm.
before access their creativity in a way that can blow their own
Hmm.
minds. And that
Hmm.
creativity, because it's so commodified in Western culture, we miss out. We miss out on the expression of our own creativity too often. And we forget that it's medicine. We forget that it's spirituality, to the
Right.
point where I sometimes call freestyle for me is a part of my spiritual practice, right? If I go too long without freestyling, I feel off center. Something is out of sorts. And then if I finally get that session in, particularly with live instruments, a real guitarist and a drummer, I feel better. I feel more grounded. I feel more whole. And I started to recognize, like, oh, I can't go without this for too long. Um, and so now
Yeah.
I bring it right on back, and I create environments for this to happen. And it helps me realize why, there are jazz musicians and then bluegrass cats too. I know I've been in Virginia with Dylan Locke, who runs the Floyd Fest in Floyd, Virginia, and they have their bluegrass Americana music with the banjos and stuff. It's like you have to do it. You have to do it.
Hmm.
It's almost like prayer. You have to do it. It feeds your soul. And I have become a cipher advocate because of that. Just imagine how the cipher could be used for civic dialogue, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, and that's one of the things that in the West it seems is like, I mean, I didn't think we could get any more sick. Like I
Right.
believe that we're the most unhealthy, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I mean it in a, like, really lovingly. Like, we've been
Mhm.
we've allowed ourselves to be so disconnected from what it means to be human, that just all sorts of pathologies, and it's just like a deprivation of being held and seen and
Mhm.
heard and accepted and part of something. Um, and like the ability to communicate is almost gone. Like it feels like it's
Yeah.
really holding on by a thread. I Feel free to
Yeah.
not go here if you don't want to, but you brought up the cipher being medicine. And once we were at,
Yeah.
maybe it was Chicago Ideas Week, I heard you speak one time very specifically
Mhm.
about being with the young women that you were holding space
Mhm.
with and doing writing prompts. And I Believe I Can Fly came up. You feel like sharing that right now?
Oh, that was well, actually, we were we had a partnership with the New School University in New York at the time. Daphne, whose last name I
Okay.
can't remember, hooked it up. Shout out to Daphne. She really supported my work for a few years there. But they had given us space as well. And Rhyme Like a Girl was is basically the female-centered version, the women's initiative of my life's work with Freestyle Union and the Cipher work. But it's only girls and women were allowed to rap in the cipher. So we sit in a circle. It's the standard cipher workshop that I do. We sit in a circle, and they're the ground rules. You must freestyle on topic. No B's and O's. Terms allowed, and no battling. You battle yourself because you are your own worst enemy. And that's what you should be focused on, which is self mastery. And then the topics go on the floor. And so we're in the cipher. There's a few dudes in the room, anxiously trying. They just sucking it up because they can't rap in the cipher. But there were about 18 women in the cipher there and about 15 spectators. And I went through all the warm ups that I use. And then I put out the topic, I believe I can fly. And so I had a beat on loop, and everybody was freestyling to it. And it was okay, simple at first. And then after the first go around, somebody then started rapping about R. Kelly. And then someone spit about him, R. Kelly peeing on little girls. And then somebody else rapped about incest and rape. And then before you know it, women were telling stories about it, and stories, things that had happened to them before the age of 18. And more than 8 of those women told true stories about what happened to them in their bodies before the age of 18. And by the end of that go round, it kept going. 2 women were crying. And it was a moment where I recognized the power of the cipher and my own limitations in terms of my capacity to guide when it gets that open. Like, yo, this is like me using all kind of powerful medicines and not going to medical school. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know if I need a social worker, a therapist, or a healer, but it made me very mindful about the facilitation of the work. And we had to have like silence, like people just sat to process for a minute. And it's one of the things that has kept me focused on believing in the work, even in my highest levels of frustration, is because I've had these experiences. And I did some work with the Girl Scouts, and they had taken me to Kansas, Salinas, Kansas. There's a prison there, a women's prison, and a program called Beyond Bars or something like that. But it's a program where they keep women in prison connected to their daughters, and the
Mm.
daughters do activities together, and they connect with the mothers, and they send the mothers the work, the daughter. But it's a really powerful exercise in keeping families connected. And I did work with the daughters, and then they took me to the prison to do work with the mothers. And I tell you,
Mm.
this cipher work, whenever I do cipher work with women, because I'm so passionate about the work and I believe in it, I'm so transparent, it liberates them. And there's gonna be tears. There's gonna be crying. When they start freestyling, they feel safe. And then it turns into this moment of really, it turns into a moment of really understanding, like, yo, this is real and people are hurting. And the
Mhm.
cipher gives them a space to acknowledge the hurt, and to do it amongst community, which in itself can be cathartic and transforming. And then the conversations that follow are just always just keep it 100 all the way real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's really forced me to focus on my own healing, and it that really forced my hand in terms of my own growing maturation process.
When you're in a space with people and you've become so open and they've become so open, how do you put them back together? Or how do you feel like you're in a space where you can transition? Because sometimes we become open in ways, and this happens. My wife is a therapist. I notice it happen in these conversations sometimes when I'm talking to my people on a podcast. But what's some reflection that you have on when people get to this place that, but and now it's time to transition back to something else. How do you do that?
This is such a great question. I'm gonna tell you, this is a great question because I toured with Craig Harris, the trombonist. I didn't tour, but I did some dates with him and his band that he had put together. And it was the Sing Sing drummers from Senegal, who were descendants of master drummer Doudou and Rose. There was a bass player who had played with like James Brown, a guitarist who had played with Prince, a 17-year-old drumming prodigy. Like it was that kind of band, right? And Craig Harris, who's this masterful trombonist, he's like a minister, a preacher, a music director, a orchestra conductor, all in one, and a gospel singer. Like his energy is just like ah. And so we were performing, and Craig had me freestyle on like 4 songs, 4 tracks, and then I did written on 2, so the whole band set. And then he was like, "Okay, I want you to do spoken word on this one. I want you to rap on this one, and I want you to this." Like, so he had me, and so I had a few writtens for a couple of them, but it was mostly freestyle because when the band is like really good, it's like easier when they understand the pocket and they're great musicians. And so I was able to do it. But these days, Craig was leading the hell out of the band. And so he'd be up there like
Mm.
whispering to the band, "All right, you over there,
Mm,
stopping the
mm,
guitar,
mm, mm,
having the
mm.
drums drop out, drop out, drop out, drop out, boom, boom." So I come on for my piece. I'm standing outside. He calls me to the mic, and I'm like, I'm spitting, then I'm letting it go. I'm letting it flow. And I start this thing. He's in my ear while I'm doing it, talking to me like I am an instrument. And I was one part annoyed, one part, this is deep, right? While I'm doing it. And then he was like, "Okay, baby, all right, pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back." So then I went down low, 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 low. Then I take it low. He's like, "Okay, bring it up, baby girl, bring it up. Come on, bring it, fire, fire, fire." Like he's doing all this while I am spitting. And it forced me to be 180% present and in tune and open. So after we finished those dates, and it was a big van, and me in the van with all of these men talking politics and sports. Oh, that was painful. But so we coming back. I'm like the little sister, and we coming back to the city. We got back to the city. I felt fingertips on my shoulders for 3 weeks. Yo, 3 weeks. I saw
Mm.
energies in my living room, and nobody could tell me how to manage this, how to deal with it. No one. And I even went to a traditional African priest, and he pulled out the cowrie shells and did some reading, and he basically he was jealous that I was having experiences he wished he had. So then I felt betrayed. This is another reason why the religion, I was like, that was a betrayal for me, someone who was my healer being envious of something I was afraid of. I'm like, take this, bro. I'm not. And it was that space. And I went to an older musician. He was like, "See, that's why such and such, such and such, he played with Archie Chapman. He used to always wear a hat. He'd cover his head after a show." And that, but they gave me advice that was unhelpful. Someone else told me to smoke weed. I don't do that. And so it just went, and then I was in living in Harlem at the time, which made it worse because it's the jungle, the paved concrete jungle. And I was literally walking around the streets understanding why people do drugs, understanding why musicians were on
Right.
heroin,
That's right.
understanding what the
Yes.
greats must have dealt with. And that
Absolutely.
I was blocked for years because I was afraid to get
Mhm.
open. I
Mhm.
never wanted to go there again because that's how open I was. So then that's when I understood why it was critical to be able to teach people about getting open and closing back up. And I'm
Yeah.
still figuring out because post show, if I'm improvising a whole night, I can't sleep until the sun comes up, and I'm a sleeper. I need 7, 8 hours to function. And so I've been figuring this out. But one of the things, we just go to the basics. And a lot of times we think the basics are corny, right? Pray. Get down on your knees and pray. And
Right.
there are physical things that happen when you're on your knees. There are physical things that
Yes.
happen when you put your forehead to the earth,
That's right.
right? And
That's right. That's
so,
right. That's right. That's
if you're
right.
not,
Yes.
even if you're not a believer, there's science to this. Even if you're not a believer, it's close to child's pose, in yoga, right? And so to do these things, it's really important. And then to become a master of the breath, right? I know you don't want to be bothered with the breath and the breathing, but it's really, really important to become a master of your breath and your breathing, to bring
Yes.
yourself down and
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
figure out, do you need hot tea? Do you need hot cocoa? Do you need a warm, beverage? Like, different people have different things that they do. For me, I take candlelit showers. Warm water, candles, certain scents help me become more present. And I can't have any light stimulation. And some people who are not sensitive think I'm being dramatic, right? But I literally, too much light, I can't function. I get nervous. And at nighttime, I have to turn lights low, right? Turn lights low. Um, so those, like, it's like becoming present to what is it that your body needs. What is Each person is different. Some people eat. I can't eat at night. I have reflux. So, and I also don't believe you should eat at night. It's bad for your digestive system to lay down on food, but that's another thing. Some people, that's what they need to calm them. Um, but understanding what it is you need to do, and then accepting, like, I have a friend, he has to exercise after shows because he's so hyped. He does
Mm.
jumping jacks and push-ups, and that would get me ready to dance. So,
Right. Right. Right.
but figuring out what you need to do to close up those portals you've opened, it's really important. It's really important. And I
Hmm.
know there are spiritual things. I haven't studied it. I haven't taken the time to study it. And I know we're going on the road again, so I should. Because the pandemic, I wasn't doing much of anything, out in terms of public stuff at night. So I didn't have to worry about it. But it's something really I'm gonna dig deeper into, so I can share it with folks. Because the cipher, it is something. I think that's why, if it's a good cipher, people talk for 2 hours after. It's the
Right.
coming down.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it reminds me of my grandparent, my grandma at church. We're like, yo, we just spent all the time at church. What y'all talk about now? Let's go, let's go. But
Yeah.
like, the energy of the cipher for me was born in devotion, devotion, which was church
Hmm.
before church, in the Baptist church with my
Hmm.
grandparents, where the old folks would moan and cry and scream and, and let it all out. And I feel like the cipher is
Hmm.
that. And sometimes you need to keep going, keep singing after the show, keep rhyming till
Hmm.
you empty all the way out. But yeah, we all need our rituals. We need our rituals, and we have to figure out what those
Yeah.
rituals are that work
Yes.
for us.
This episode of the Travelers Podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp online therapy platform. And when you use our link to sign up with them, which is betterhelp.com/travelers, you're going to get a discount on your first month of therapy. And we're going to get a commission for having made that connection. And that helps the work that we do here on the Travelers Podcast. So it's a win for everybody. I'm a person who didn't grow up in therapy. I'm a person who grew up in a time when no matter what you were struggling with, no matter what was going on, you just really didn't do therapy. We thought that therapy was for people who were like serial killers and like you had to really be something had to really be going on. I mean, I saw counselors and things like that I just didn't grow up in a culture of people that did therapy and I think a lot of us didn't. I think there was a stigma around it and it's just not something that we knew how to access. And then on top of that, you watch all these movies and TV shows where they just make therapy look really corny and unrealistic. Like therapy is laying on a couch and telling all your business to somebody, and then they give you the magical answers and the pills that make everything better, or at least they subdue you to the point where you will be okay and where you can be well adjusted and well adapted and you'll be quiet and shut up. And I mean, then over time, I got to know some therapists. My wife actually became a therapist. And I started realizing that no, actually, therapy is something that most, if not all of us, really deserve access to. That therapy really is a group of human beings that have dedicated their lives to learning the way that human beings develop and grow and also finding ways to hold space with us, to talk with us, to reflect the things that we're saying back to us, to help us see ourselves and our struggles and our stories and our traumas and all of the stuff that we're carrying through life, just to see it in a different way that allows us access to understand it from different perspectives that carrying this stuff in secrecy and in private just doesn't allow. If I'm carrying this thing on my own, all of this stuff that I've been through, I'm only going to be able to know it in the way that I was seeing it while I was going through that trauma, which usually means that I was in survival mode, which usually means that I was doing whatever I needed to do to just live through that mess that I was dealing with. And what therapy does, and there are a lot of different types of therapy, but one of the things that therapy really does, and the main reason why I am an advocate for it, is that you sit with somebody and you just talk. You share with them whatever you feel comfortable sharing. You don't got to tell them all your secrets the first time. Talk to them for a little while. Give them some basics and see how they handle it. And then see what kind of questions they ask or what kind of things they share and just get a sense and a vibe for like, do I trust this person? Can this person hold my stuff? Can this person help me? Is this person worthy of my trust? You know what I'm saying? But sharing this stuff with them and then letting them ask questions, letting them repeat it back to us in different words or with different framing, it can be so helpful just to have the opportunity to know ourselves a little better, to be able to see ourselves from a different angle, to be able to see those moments, those points in our timeline from a different perspective. And that stuff can just shake loose different opportunities, and that's what it is. I live outside of America and I don't have insurance. So going to therapy was really there's a lot of barriers for me. I heard about BetterHelp on a podcast that I listened to, and so I tried it and it was really good for me. And so we approached them about starting this partnership and we have. So I believe you deserve access to this. I believe you deserve to give therapy a shot. And if you are having difficulty just walking into somebody's office or you have barriers like I did, maybe BetterHelp is the way to go. So, and if you try it, go to BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/travelers and give it a shot because you deserve it. All right, let's get back to this conversation. So, are you in the Gambia or you're in Senegal?
In Senegal. Yeah, I'm in
Okay,
Dakar, Senegal.
amazing. And how long has that been I mean, I know you've been many times, but how long has it been that's you're been considered home?
Well, I think in 2021 is when I started making the shift. And I knew that I was moving gradually. And now I think I signed a lease February 2nd of 2022, and, put art on the walls a month later. And it's official. I'm officially bicontinental. Yes. So it's
Crazy. What's the visa process like for living there long term?
well, I must confess that I've never explored all of those rules and issues. And I tend, because I traveled so much and I've done so much work with so many artists, I feel at home. I think eventually, let's say if I want to buy land or something like that, I've got to start to think about those things. But my first objective was to make the mental shift, to move out of a space of fear, to let go of doubt, and to really believe within me that I had a right to be where I want to be. And so now I'm convinced there's no more internal questioning or persuasion needed. I own it. Like, I own my desire, I own my purpose. And I finally embraced this as a
Hmm.
part of my destiny, you know? Yeah. But I'll figure that part out later this year. Like, I want to register my business here, and get the account set up and all of that stuff. So the plan is to do that when I come off tour in April. So I'm getting everything starting the official process. But I have, everything's in my name.
Do you find yourself kicking it mostly with locals or with expats or like a mixture of the two?
Well, I think the reason I'm so comfortable is because the locals embrace me. I actually spent a great deal of time avoiding expats for a variety of reasons, but partly because of the mentality of most. I don't mean to make generalizations, but when you enter a culture like the one in Senegal, one that is Teranga and hospitality, and then either based on cultural or spiritual religious principles, people are going to be open and caring and kind, that
Hmm.
I found it difficult
Right,
to
right.
engage with
Yeah.
expats, because my expectations are now high. My standards are different for being here, and if I'm not greeted properly, I'm offended. And I also can.
It's so real. One of the main things that I realized when I came to Istanbul is that I just had to really change my expectations around things like time, just like the ability to buy and be a click away from anything I want, the ability to just, get whatever. And this idea of like expediency and timeliness and all this stuff. And it made me realize for myself how those expectations were directly tied to our suffering, because like it's not natural that you would just be able to push a button and an out of season fruit would just arrive at your doorstep
Right.
fully ripe. Like something unnatural has to happen to someone somewhere for that
Yes.
to be the case. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And I wasn't ready to really think about the way that my desires and demands and expectations were related to the system of suffering that I've spent my whole life fighting against. Um, and it started to make me think too about the way that, there was always an institution that was related to slavery somehow,
Yeah.
but there wasn't this intercontinental kind of thing until people had this crazy demand for cotton, which is related to
Yeah.
wearing too many clothes, owning too many clothes, tobacco and sugar, which is mostly related to rum. And you know what I'm saying? Those particular commodities. Like I want to drink whenever I want one. I want to be fly and dipped at all times. I want to be able to roll something and smoke something whenever I want. and like just the evolution of those desires and the, moving to a society where you can't have everything you want. Even if you
Yeah.
got some money, you can't.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's wild.
it is wild, and it's deep. I have a friend who's been here, and then she went to record in Mali, and then she came back, and it's just been interesting to watch her highs and lows and ups and downs in her process of trying to get her album done and her new recordings done, and watching her stress out unnecessarily and overthink. And I saw myself, I'm like, yo, oh wow, I really have changed because I'm chilling, you know? I am chilling. And it's like you said, letting that stuff go. Even I had a youngin' die. He's not young anymore, but he was in one of the first MCs that was in a mentorship circle and a collective I had in Washington, D.C. And he died recently and the other day. And there was a woman who's a friend booking me for a show, a TV show. And I was already behind 2 days getting her stuff that she needed, for next week and all the stuff. But she started to push on me for the content. And I told her, I said, look, a dear, dear brother friend has died. He was like a son at one point, minty, very loyal to me. I mean, street loyal from the streets and just loving. And I'm having a challenge. And so because I'm changing my relationship to death, I'm not in the bed morning, I'm working. I went to the studio and the producer was like, "Hey, try this for me." And I just buried myself in his experiment because it allowed me to forget. And then the next day, I got some text messages that were very New York style, crispy. And I read the text messages like, really? And then I was like, oh, yeah, she's on New York time. I am not. And so I allowed them to go in. In the end, she was saying, I think we're just going to have to go in a new direction. And I just replied, do what you got to do. Take care. But that's all I had to say. And then she came back and then we ended up having this exchange and I was able to be authentic with her and to explain to her, yesterday I told you I was in mourning. I'm not going to apologize for being in mourning. I'm honoring my humanity. And if that means I miss the opportunity to be on
That's right.
air, I'm okay with that. I'm not taking it personally. Do what you must do, but please don't project your anxiety onto me. It does not belong to me. I no longer do that. And it was just a moment for me to move more in a mature way, to be more spiritually mature, to not take her personally because it wasn't personal. And I sense that a lot of people are in this space of desperation to make a thing happen. I'm not. Things are happening, and they're unfolding. And I finally accepted I took the long road, right? It wasn't on purpose. This is my journey. I had issues, I had trauma, I had to heal it. And now I'm in a
Hmm.
space where I
Hmm.
feel whole.
That's right.
It's coming together. Some people are frustrated with me because I'm slow, because now I realize I have ADD. And that's not me. I don't want to take medication. So I'm figuring out how to navigate it. But I tell you, I trust that it is all happening. Because if it wasn't, I wouldn't have met this producer with a studio. If it wasn't, I basically got a new manager here that speaks all five of the languages, who's helping me navigate. I have three brothers around me where I can just be the woman and chill. I don't have to worry about any other gender politics and are you married and whatever, whatever. They handle it. And so I'm just sitting here feeling blessed while in my sadness, grieving. And if it'll get done today, it will. If it won't, it'll get done tomorrow. And I tell you, some folks freak out. I'm good. I am blessed. Alhamdulillah. I just really just, it's a new way. Sometimes I weird myself out.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so real. I wonder, it was really popular in the generation or two before us, for for the people that we looked up to, like the Maya Angelou's and the James Baldwins and others, to leave, artists especially, to just really acknowledge the fact that like my body needs to be somewhere else. I
Mhm.
need for my mind and my spirit and my body to acknowledge that I don't belong to America. I don't belong to the white man. I belong on earth because I'm human. So for so many people to actually have an address somewhere else is really major, and it's really enormous. I remember the first time that we all heard the story that Yassine Bey was trying to travel without his passport. And like Yassine has his passport. It's not that he doesn't. It's just that he was like, I don't need a hall pass from Massa to like move around the earth that Allah created me in. So I'm not going to show you my hall pass. And
Right.
you just imagine him saying it also, I'm not going to my hall pass. Like, what do you, this is crazy. This is says wow, wow. But I wonder specifically, like for you, what has it been like for your body to be in West Africa?
Mm. Hmm. For my body to be in West Africa, it has been liberating, and I will say I have a little bit of that syndrome. I'm not having a because the tour manager for this upcoming tour that Rhyme Like a Girl, my collective, is doing, she asked me what happened when I got to Senegal. Did I have to show my vaccination? Did I have to show this? Did I have the yellow fever and that? And I was just like, no. And she was like, what do you mean? I said, they never asked me. And there are a couple other people around. They were like, what do you mean? And I think it's because I move through it with a certain level of I'm supposed to be here. So there's certain things that just haven't been happening the last 4 times I've come into the country, and it's made me a bit lax because I know that's not going to happen everywhere I go. But here in Senegal, it has. And I think being in West Africa it's a moment. I remember being 9 years old, maybe 8. There was a TV show in the US called Gilligan's Island. And Gilligan's Island had some of the worst stereotypes in the world, right? They had these blackface people, supposedly Africans. But my cousin Carla and I didn't see the stereotype. We saw African. I'm proud to be African. And so when my grandfather, remember my grandpa saying, and we were saying, well, granddaddy, they're talking the African language. He was like, that ain't no African language. They made that up. And then he talked about the stereotype, but he just left it. He didn't go deeper. And she and I then created our own African language. And she and I became obsessed with African dance. And then my auntie, who was a poet and a English tutor at the college, she had gone to UC Berkeley. We would go to Berkeley with her and be in this progressive poetry movement as little girls. And that's where we met real African people, right? And regardless of all the negative stereotypes, for whatever reason, and maybe it were those poets and those scholars we have
Mhm.
around that international community at UC Berkeley, we internalized what it meant to be African and that it meant something good, and we identified with it. So from that age, I was determined. There were 2 things that I was doing. I was going to live abroad, London, and somewhere in Africa, and in New York City. And that was at the age of 9. I was moving with deliberate intention. And so to be here, it's almost like sometimes when I would ride across the Brooklyn Bridge, I would get tears in my eyes because I remember being in this working class hood where people didn't leave, and the people who left to go away to college always ended up coming back when I was growing up. And all there was to do was baseball and church and food, eating. And an idyllic working class upbringing, you know what I mean? All these races of people getting along together. But also there was the struggle bus of this is it. Forget your dreams.
Right.
But to be living the
Get
dreams,
a government job, trying to get something with a good pension.
yes.
Mhm.
Yes, or go work at the steel mill or Dow Chemical or the glass factory, that was it. And it didn't matter what race or ethnicity you were. Everybody had an uncle, a dad that worked at one of these places. Um, and so to have come first, to have been able to go to college, to Howard University, and actually made it through, which was very difficult for me. And then being able to live in Brooklyn as a resident, and then now being able to be here, it's like I gotta write some new dreams on this checklist because I've like literally manifested um everything to where I wanted to start to create this life. And now the dreams of I'm revisiting dreams I thought were impossible. And West Africa is making that possible.
Mm.
And, my first embrace here was pure. My first trip here in 2001, as a cultural diplomat, a hip hop diplomat, everybody warned me about the Muslim men, especially the old ones, and how they were going to treat a young girl rapper and da 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 da. And I remember being at the National School of the Arts here, and there were two old men in the back with traditional head to toe garb. And at the end of my workshop, teaching artist workshop, they called the translator, who then called me over. And I get teary eyed when I tell this story because those men, they sat down, they were elders, and I was standing up, and they thanked me for coming home. And they thanked me for doing the good rap, if you know what I mean. That's what they called it, the good rap. And they
Right,
thanked
right, right.
they thanked
Right, right, right.
me. They thanked me for teaching the children. And they acknowledged my freestyle.
Mm.
And one of them talked about how the improvisation is spirituality, and to respect it and honor it. And
Mhm.
then they prayed over me. They prayed over me. Like, I mean, prayed over me. And for me to keep going and to keep coming back. And that was the scary Muslim men moment that all these people warned
Yeah.
me about. It was just just like one of the most beautiful exchanges, intergenerational exchanges I've ever had in my life. And it happened here in West Africa. So
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things that I've experienced, like me and my family, we were going every year until the pandemic, and so I think we'll start that again.
Mhm.
But the really beautiful way that just so many things that were really incredible, like the way that generations interact with each other, the way that men seem to prefer being with men and women seem to prefer being with women in public, but that there's no problem sharing space. They share space really beautifully. And I got the impression that nobody was out. Like nobody was untribed. There was no such thing
Right.
as unfriending. Nobody was ghosted or blocked or
Right.
canceled. Like there was a person that I noticed, like children would just be running around, like children just own everything. Like they're just out like doing their thing at all times.
Yes.
And there was certain people that like when company would change, they would come and pick up the children, and like women would come pick up the children and bring them somewhere else. And I just would notice that
Mhm.
there's certain flows that I haven't learned them yet, certain like communal, like group rhythms
Yeah.
where I'm like, children are in certain
Mhm.
circumstances and not in others. And I don't know exactly why, but everybody, like the way that flocks of birds move, just everybody will start to move a certain way. Like
Right.
everybody is part of what's going on here. Everybody is safe, everyone is fed, and it's not that there's not disagreements and it's not
Yes.
that there's not problems between people, but it really felt like these people remember how to be a family, how to have relationships and friendships, and just how the human being can not only coexist, but like really that the flow of society, like in the West, it seems like if you get out in the deep end, they're just trying to push you down until you drown and get away from me. Whereas like the current
Yeah.
seems to be wherever traditional people are, that like we're trying to bring you back in. we're trying to like, bring you back in a
Mhm.
way that's healthy for you and healthy for everyone else. And
Mhm.
it's just such a beautiful
Mhm.
exchange between people.
Mhm.
Like even the criminals are part of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like even people that gamble or people that hustle or like,
Yeah.
like they're still part of the
Yeah.
circle. They're part of the cipher.
Yeah. Yeah, like, well, I think, one of the things that I love is, there are flaws, and I've been coming back and forth since 2001. I know the flaws, right? And where the shortcomings exist. And I also know that as an outsider, I have the freedom to speak to certain things. And I'm learning how to do
Mm,
it delicately. And to
mm,
ask questions, and I am always amazed by the listening that I get to feel heard most of the time. And but this the beauty of the communal eating. One of my favorite things to do now is to eat communally from the same platter at the same time. And it's something that I want to retain. It's something that if you come to my house, even if I'm not living here, you're gonna be eating like that, right? We're gonna eat like this. Like I want to get the platter, and because it's important. And I think about how often everyone's eating in their own room with their own device separately. And the scientific study shows how bad that is for your mental and physical health. Yet we continue to do this. We grow further and further apart. And how everybody can be separate working for the day, but at lunchtime, they all sit in the same place in the patio and eat together, talk a little, have tea, and then go back to work. Um, there are
yeah.
just some things that make sense. And the beauty of their ability to retain those cultural components and practices, I think, is something the world could take note of and take a look at. And now I've begun to internalize it where it's become a part of me. Like I just remember how I didn't think to ask everybody how they were doing. And not only do they ask you how you're doing here, they ask you 5 different ways.
That's right. That's right.
Versus,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know, first they wish you peace, assalamu alaikum, and then they want to say Koma Sava, and then there's Nengadef, and then there's Megi Sijem,
Yeah,
and
goddamn.
then after all that,
Yeah.
they say again, how are you okay? How are you? And then you're like, I just answered that, but they really want to know.
Man, when we go there, we go to the Gambia primarily to visit our sheikh. Like our family sheikh is in the Gambia, Sheikh Mohammed
Yeah,
Jailani. And when people ask, like, what do you do when you go there? It's like, man, I can't describe it. And I don't mean that on some like, it's indescribable. Like how some people talk about their like,
yeah,
but I'm like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
we sit in a courtyard of a descendant of Haji Kunta Kinte on like plastic chairs and we drink like juice out of reused water bottles and we eat out of big plates of food. And then Sheikh Mohammed comes and literally he just for 3 hours asks everybody how they're doing. He just goes around the circle. That's all that's
yeah,
happening. Outwardly, that's all that's happening. It's just like
yeah,
him asking people, Bakari, how you doing? Mashallah, mashallah, mashallah. Oh, new clothes, mashallah. Brother Ali, how you doing?
yeah,
Mashallah. And then eventually he'll get back. Bakari, you're not. Why? How come you're not eating? Eat more food. How are you doing?
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And
yeah,
but there's just something in that like acknowledgement that maybe there's a lot going on and you might speak on it and you might not.
yeah,
But then also being asked that question repeatedly is almost like because like what
yeah,
else are we doing in therapy other than how am I? Wait a minute, let
right,
me like take some time to actually think about how am I doing
right,
and
right,
answering that question, even
right,
if even if just something in my eyes is answering it, even if people just say, Alhamdulillah, I'm
yeah,
good. Praise be to Allah,
yeah,
But
yeah,
something about
yeah,
that particular question and 4 straight hours
yeah.
of how are you doing? It's like it really matters. There's a lot going on underneath that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of the things that I loved so much when I first came years ago was that every MC had a song about God, about Allah, and every MC had a song about their mother. It just seemed to be consistent. And there was something very beautiful about that. And in this space now, like a lot of the work I've been doing is teaching about the cipher. And so my last 3 residencies here, my I was teaching the wisdom of the cipher, and it was deep because some things do get lost generation to generation. And there was this crew of really talented artists who didn't fully understand the science of vibration and how to vibe and connect with one another, which bugged me out because they were so busy becoming like the artist overseas, wanting to
Right, right.
reflect that. And it's just amazing when I got to see a deeper purpose for me. And there was an elder who pointed out to me, here you are, returning home to remind us of who we all are. And it was this thing, he's like, and here you are with hip hop. It left here, rap went left here to go there, and then you're bringing it back. And it was just a deep, deep conversation and the thoughts of like, oh, this is bigger than hip hop.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's bigger than me.
yeah. So we talking about the spirituality of the whole situation.
Yeah.
I've known you for, probably 10 years, and I've always known you to be a very spiritual person, but I always felt like it was a very just kind of undefined, universal,
Yeah.
human, spiritual oneness that I
Mhm.
always vibe with. That I'm like, you know what I mean? Because at the core,
Mhm.
that's what we're talking about. But it's just been recently that I've really started to see you as a person who identifies as a Muslim. How
Yeah.
is that as recent as I think it is? And if so, how did you go through New York and DC in the 90s? How did you travel around the world and visit all these Muslim countries and just now get to the place where like what happened recently that made that shift? And is it as recent as a shift as I thought it was?
Well, it is, I converted before, many, many years ago, but I had religious wounds
Mhm.
and I realized I spent many years, I wrote poetry to God about my disappointment in God, and then I realized it was humans that were disappointing me, right? And it's been a long journey of healing. I grew up in a church, a Baptist church, where I witnessed the transition from the old to the new, from where my grandparents' generation was in charge to this next generation, where the reverend who had the hot candy red apple Camaro, and to where the adults in the choir smoke weed in the parking lot. Like I went from all the way, and I saw the church
Mhm.
divide into two when they felt like Reverend Brown had gotten too old. And as a teenager, it was absolutely heartbreaking to witness. And I remember me and a childhood friend, me and LaShawn, he and I would sit in the back just waxing poetic about the foolishness of adults. And that stayed with me. And then my uncle had joined the Christ Church, the Fred Price type of church, and to become a minister and started his own church. And his version was very toxic. And like everybody was bad, even the Baptists and the Methodists and the Catholics were bad. All of us going to hell because we didn't understand there was only one true faith, the Christian faith. And if you didn't get saved underneath that faith, you were going to be banned to hell the rest of eternity. And
Mhm.
that's left me scarred. It left me scarred. I
Right.
tried
Yeah.
traditional African religions. I had experiences with humans in that space. I've participated in, I did meditation with Aser Set for 2 years in DC, and I learned how to really go in. I've witnessed things in ceremonies. Vodun, Vodun helped me release my Black rage, being in a Vodun community in
Mm.
Philadelphia.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
my my big brother was a hip hop head, hip hop producer. He and his wife were priests and priestesses. And he showed me, Vodun taught me about the shadow, about how to use the dark side for good and why it was important to acknowledge it, how to speak your truth. And it was that practice where I wrote a song. They were doing a demo for Eminem was one of the people, somebody else, and I was like the ghost rapper demo person for this thing. And there was one song about a mother protecting her child who had been raped. And I had to write the song 10 times to write the truth because I had waxed over the truth in the face of being kumbaya, and that's what God wanted us to do, was to be peace. And that meant if it hurt, I can't say nothing. And it was like, looking back,
Yeah.
it was deep. Like, my journey of growth was very deep and very painful. And I think for
Mm.
me, I didn't have the discipline, the desire to, I didn't want to, I didn't have I had commitment issues because religion had disappointed me so much.
Mhm.
That was it. But I've always had the pull to Islam. It's always been my first go-to. I used to listen to an Adhan for 2 hours in the morning just because.
Yeah.
And that has been like a big part of me. One of the draws to Senegal is that the call to prayer is going to happen 5 times a day. Like, that brings my soul peace.
Mm.
And the practice for me here, and that I watched, I had, then I started to be like, most of the men I dated were Muslim, because there was a certain energy that came with their practice, particularly if they grew up in a healthy home. You know what I mean? And that energy made me feel better, right? And there's something about the fasting that resonated with me, and the communal collective process of it. So
Yeah.
even at my most chaotic drama queen, still addicted to drama self, Ramadan meant, okay, let's get centered. And so it's just been a circle. I kept coming to it and leaving, coming to it, leaving, coming to it, leaving. And then moving here just really offered me the community support I need to mature into who I want to be. And also, being here as an American, I get to have conversations other women might not have agency to have. So if there's a contradiction, I can talk about it with someone I know, who I know cares about me and is not going to be offended, because that's Toni. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so that's
Yeah.
also been beautiful, where you have the stereotypes, and you have, let's say, like a friend, she has these stereotypes about men, these men and this and that. But those men are my friends and my brothers, who are also human. So forget that they said
Right.
blah, blah, blah. Let them speak. Let them speak. Listen, and then they're going to let you speak and have a dialogue. But too often we remove ourselves from the conversation and then get mad that there is no conversation. I don't do that anymore. And so I've been able to find peace and to find a home. I do want to find a new sheikh, um, and but I'm on my journey, and I'm telling you, I know it's no coincidence that I come back and I'm recording spiritual music. Not in my plan, yo. Not in my plan. I didn't even feel I was worthy, and then I started getting invitations. So I was in the studio like, is this really like, yo, is this really like, yes, 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 yes. So I know that I was like, I'm on the right path. I'm in the right space. This is where I'm supposed to be. I am home. And I think part of me, because
Mhm.
of my uncle's brand of Christianity, I had guilt, like maybe I was betraying my family, you know. I had guilt. I also had to develop the confidence and the courage to honor my path and my calling, so that I'm not
Yes, yeah,
quietly
yes, yes.
quietly practicing. I'm gonna practice, but I'm just gonna do it real quiet so nobody asks me any questions.
Yeah,
So
it's so real.
I'm just coming out of that. Yeah, yeah. So I'm really thinking about like studying in a way that makes sense for me, that's practical, because life is lifing. But like I wanted to take Angelica's Village Auntie's Foundational Womanhood
Oh,
course, the rites of passage, and to really just step in, to step all the way in, because I am in a space where I find peace. And in this, we got a lot of intellectual friends. We have a lot of scholarly friends, and they're going to debate the validity of everything. And I finally accepted
right.
that I owe no one any explanation. Like I don't
There you
even
go.
have to
There it
have the
is.
conversation with
There it
you.
is. Say that, Tony. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And so it's like me. It's like me loving myself deeper has finally got me to that place where I don't have to talk about this with you. You're
Right.
clear about where you stand, and I accept you, and I love you. And next topic.
I love West African Islam specifically, and I mean that's that's it's not a monolith, but particularly Gambia, Senegal, and because it's practiced very differently in Nigeria, very differently in different places. But man, something about West Africa in general, though, one thing that they do really share is that there's a deep relationship with the Quran specifically, and that recitation of the
Hmm.
Quran is such a universal thing, you know what I mean, that we really believe that that is the uncreated speech of the divine, that we're able to have in
Right.
our heart and on our tongue and in our body. And this thing of that, like wherever people from that area go throughout the world and in the diaspora, it's the relationship with the Quran, like writing it. I don't know if you had a chance to check out Dr. Bilal Ware's book, The Walking Quran, but talking about
Hmm.
that writing of the Quran on those traditional board, the loha, that's like,
Hmm.
written and then memorized and then washed and then recited. It's such a beautiful thing. And like we're talking about ciphering and we're talking about communing with the divine, one of the ways is through inspiration and improvisation, but also the recitation of the Quran literally makes the human
Hmm.
body vibrate with what we believe to be the uncreated, timeless speech of God. And that men recite it,
Right.
women recite it, different people in different, and there are also different accepted, valid dialects. There are different types of recitation. You know what I'm saying? There are different scales. There are different meters and pitches and within that recitation. It's like such a really incredible
Yeah.
thing. So when I started hearing you, well, I was like, I think Tony's identifying as a Muslim now, and immediately I was like, man, when is the Quran like when is that connection gonna be? Because that's gonna be next level.
Yeah, yeah. It's been to be an adult, right? And to
Mm,
be in a space where I'm learning so much new at the same time has been deep. Because at the same time I'm doing this, I also signed up for a business coach. Like I'm working with this cat coach Howard Britt to increase my business acumen, and how to create a marketing funnel for my meditation. I have a self-love meditation album, and it's sitting. But when I tell you my brain is being stretched, and just learning how to pray has been a stretch. You understand? Like just learning how to
mm,
pray is like
yeah.
I'm awkward, and but also being in a space where everybody supports you is different, you know? There are jokes that if you don't realize the humor of the culture might feel like judgment, you know? Because sometimes the
Yes.
joking can be a little like, wait. But
What the
in
hell?
the laughter, it kind of yeah. In the laughter, it eases everything. And really what it is people are just happy. They're happy for you, you know, and they are celebrating you and giving you attention. And so that space, it's just all as I have like 5 new things happening here. Wolof is new, you know what I mean? In terms of me learning it, I've been coming back and forth. The foods, you know, I'm learning how to cook new things, and how to, and then be my own personal health challenges require me to change my diet. So even some of my favorite Senegalese foods, I can't eat anymore, or I have to prepare them differently, because I had severe reflux. And so I've had to change things over, to the point where I actually sometimes reach a point of frustration where like I have these moments where, am I crazy? I just want to quit. But I
Mm,
also know that
mhm,
with each level of ascension, I have more peace and
mhm,
I impact more lives. You know, like I can make a
mhm,
statement and 5 women are sending me DMs because of an Instagram post telling me their whole stories. And I'm
mhm,
like, okay, I'm doing the work. Or my homeboy, a dear friend of mine died. He was like a mentor, business advisor, but my brother. And where I was able to, his one of his best friends, you know, went into emotional like breakdown. I was able to hold him up. And prior to these recent years, I wouldn't have had the spiritual strength to do that. I would have been bent
mhm,
over. I didn't have this, I wasn't strong enough. Like my external strength might have been a little beefy, but I was just so fragile. And now I feel like I have
mm,
spiritual fortitude, you know? My resilience is different where I can be grounded. I can cry with you without tears coming out all the time, you know? And I was able to be there. I can be there for my friend's daughter, you know, when he died. And I like this version of me. And I know that it's only going to get better as I learn to pray on a consistent basis, you know? And my freestyles are getting better again. Like I feel like I was whack for a decade. And now I'm coming back around, you
What?
know? I feel like I'm coming back. The music is good. Wait till you hear this new music. Yo,
Mm,
it's good. And I just did it in Bala track. I never imagined me having the capacity to do Mbala, but the producer wanted me to try it. I was like, why not? Here I am. And then I'm working the spiritual singer. Like now I'm getting used to this element being in my music. And who knew I have this Islamic spiritual singer on 3 of my tracks. Like it's, and I love it. And other people are gonna love it too, you know? And I'm not, and I have no apologies. Like I am in full embrace. I recorded and finished the self-love meditation project in 10 days, mixed and mastered, wrote
incredible.
it,
Incredible.
conceptualized it, and it's sincere and it's genuine and it's beautiful. And I would not have been able to do that if I were still struggling in that realm, you know, with those things. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's nice to see the all of the years of healing work finally coming to a space where I can in a healthy way help others to heal.
The Travelers Podcast has been sponsored by and in partnership with the Zakat Foundation from day one. And we're very grateful and honored to be able to say that Zakat, Z-A-K-A-T, is the pillar of the Islamic tradition that deals with charity, with giving back, with contributing, with donating to causes that elevate the overall dignity of the human family and the lived condition that human beings are experiencing. And it's a universal thing that exists in all wisdom traditions, but also just in the core of the human being, we know that there's inherently something good about giving to others. And in this particular time that we live in, many, many, many of us are experiencing, dealing with, struggling with depression and anxiety. And one of the things that's well known is that depression and anxiety can be relieved, alleviated. We can get a little bit a sense of solace in our anxiety and in our depression by recognizing and acknowledging that no matter how little I think I have, there are always people that have less than me. And that could be in all areas. We could be talking about joy. Maybe I'm able to access a little joy on a day when somebody isn't. Maybe life is really hard, but today, for whatever reason, I'm outside and I feel like I got to smile. And sometimes smiling at a person that's not in a moment of joy can be all it takes to turn somebody's moment and day around. And then sometimes it can be as little as asking somebody how they're doing. But then also, no matter how much we feel like we're struggling, and we are, we have something that somebody else doesn't have. I read a number recently that said that for someone who makes $32,000 a year US, those people are in the top 1% of global income, which is crazy because $32,000 a year in America is at or below the poverty line, depending on how many people you're supporting. You know what I'm saying? So in America, you can be at or below the poverty line, but still globally have more than most people in the world. A lot of people live on $1 or $2 a day. So the reality is that no matter how much I'm struggling, it doesn't take anything away from the very real experience of struggling wherever we are. I still have something I can share with somebody else. I still do possess the power to give something that means a lot to somebody else. I can give some real relief to somebody. I can give some real opportunity for somebody. $5 gives somebody a hot meal in a place where that's not promised in a week, in a month, for somebody to have a hot meal. $50 a month sponsors an orphan. And when you give that $50, all of that $50 goes directly to the orphan. You know what I'm saying? Through Zakat Foundation. That's not the case in other organizations. So I really, really recommend that you go to follow Zakat Foundation on social media. It's Zakat US, and their website is zakatfoundation.org. They have programs all over the world. It's an Islamic organization, but they don't only help Muslims, and they don't use this work to try to proselytize and convert people. That's just not what it is. These are people that I know, people that I've worked with, people that I trust. And so I'm really grateful and honored to be able to share this. But stop what you're doing and go check out Zakat Foundation. Find a way to get in where you fit in. Put a little paint where it ain't. Find something that we have that somebody else might not have, and the power that we possess to share a little bit of relief, share a little bit of joy, and to elevate the dignity of human beings around the world. Happy to rock with Zakat Foundation. The Travelers Podcast is something that me and BK1 do from the heart, and it's meant to be for your heart. From day one, BK was my DJ, and we built this thing of ours by playing in little clubs and eventually going out on the road. And we had support. We had people that brought us out and let us open for them. We had a record label that was backing us, and all that's really dope. And on this podcast, we've got sponsors, and they help tremendously, and we really appreciate them very much. But at the end of the day, and at the beginning of the day, and all points throughout the day, really what drove all of this is that we believe in the message, and we believe in each other, and we believe in the people that we're connecting with. And some of y'all were part of those early shows, and you've been down ever since then, and you felt that from those early days, from those early 2000s when we hit the road and we're doing little shows and et cetera. And so here we are on this podcast doing it the same way. The best way to connect with this thing and to be part of it is to go to brotherali.com. You're going to immediately be prompted to sign a mailing list. I get it. I don't like giving people my email either. But trust me, I write the emails myself and I only do a few of them a year. You're not going to have to worry about emptying your email box of all of my joints. It's going to be pretty rare. We also on there have really dope merch. So this podcast has a logo that was created by my brother Mark from Medina Hip Hop, who does a series of Most of My Heroes Don't Appear on No Stamp. So it's MF Doom, Chuck D, Lauryn Hill, all these really incredible hip hop artists. And he made one for us. And we're really honored that that's the case. If you go to brotherali.com, you'll be able to see the podcast merch, the t-shirts, sweatshirts. There's a really dope viral video of this dude busting into his girlfriend's yoga class, and he's like playing a saxophone, and they pan around the room, and he's just like just this crazy prank on this yoga class. But one of the ladies, I think it might be the lady friend that he's actually pranking, is wearing a Travelers Podcast t-shirt. So whenever that clip starts to go viral again, people always send it to me. It makes me really happy. But if you head there, you'll be able to see all of the podcast merch. You'll also see all of the other musical offerings. All of my vinyl is up there. The Brother Minister cassettes are up there. Brother Minister t-shirts and sweatshirts are there. There's a lot of really dope stuff there in the merch area. And also, if you go to the section called Join, you'll see the caravan, that we have different levels and different means and methods to connect with us in different ways. And there really is a community that's being developed there. So head to brotherali.com, check out the merch, sign the mailing list, go to the caravan section, and just know that you are the reason that we do this. And we're grateful to you and for you. Hearing you say, like, yo, I was whack for 10 years. Like, man, only somebody that really practices this, like these art forms, would know that feeling. You know what I'm saying? Where to an outsider, like anybody looking at you would be like, because I'm saying, like, you don't need me to say this to you, but you are one of the truly like greatest of all time,
Mhm.
that the
Mhm.
freestyling
Mhm.
artists, you know what I'm saying? And so, but I know what it means to be practicing, because when you're in a practice, you have an awareness of it that no one else can really have. And like there are times where we're
Yeah.
able to, impact people in the room and still do our thing, and like I'm getting by no problem. But I know that I'm not really accessing,
Mhm.
that I'm just kind of like I'm resting
Mhm.
on laurels. I'm floating on an initial
Mhm.
push that I put in
Mhm.
years ago. I'm coasting, and other people maybe
Yes.
don't need to know that.
Yes.
That's but every practice is
Yeah.
like that. There's times where when I talk to my sheikh, I'm like, I'll complain about my spiritual practice, and he starts complaining about his. But his level of complaining about himself is so high that I'm like, man, I wish I had that problem, But hearing you talk about, also all of the years of work that you've put in around healing and growing and becoming connected and helping others to do it, it's just such an amazing thing to reach a point, to reach a new plateau. You know what I'm saying? That's
Right.
like the fact that
Yeah.
the growth never stops is like such an
Yes.
amazing thing to feel, and then also to witness it in each other. Like there a few
Yeah.
minutes back when you said, I like this new version of me, and just hearing the like, because you're somebody I've always looked up to in these regards, but just witnessing you reach a new plane, and just like, oh man, a new level of the Jedi has just opened up. You know what I'm saying? It's such a blessing to
Yes,
see
yeah.
that, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like in this age where we're all being called to step up.
Mm,
And some people are able to do it, and some people don't have the wherewithal to do it. The energy, the human resource that's needed to be able to do it. And so as I'm moving through this phase, one of the things I'm absolutely grateful for is that I am able to do it. And that now I
mhm,
can do it with boundaries, and I know how to to pay attention to my expectations of others. And my expectations of myself are still way too harsh. But my self awareness is high. I know when I'm doing it, I know when I'm unnecessarily stressing myself out. But being able to step up is we're good. We're all being called right now. 2023 is one of those years. And I know other people recognize it because I hear everybody talking about it. Like, what are you wanting to step up with their families? There are people who understand they need to improve all of their relationships. And what are they going to do to step up into that? And there are the folks who are stuck, but I'm not in that circle. That's not my community. In my world, like I'm just watching.
Oh, man.
I'm just watching it. I'm just watching it and getting to the point where there's certain conversations like I can't even participate anymore. I'm not interested. Like
Hell
I
yeah.
can't
Man, I
even
feel that.
even it's deep. I do slip and I sometimes go into teacher mode in the comment section for the New York Post. But it'll just be one comment and I'll never come back to the post even though I see ding 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 online. But sometimes I feel it's necessary to not remove ourselves completely from the conversation and drop a little bomb, truth bomb, and keep it going. And so, hey, let me drop some statistics here. Since you would have laughed about there being a war on women, let me drop some statistics here and explain why the sister just made that comment. And it's not funny. And I know it impacts when there's no comment back. Like, oh,
Mhm.
truth received.
Yeah.
Truth received. And
Right.
so that's my cultural warrior work at the time. But the rest of it, it's all internal. It's internal. This next year is about internal growth, spiritual growth, and impacting the lives of those closest to me, mentees. I have some random folk that reach out to me. And if I have the energy, I expend it, and they can do with it, they can do what they want with the information and the insights. But I've figured out ways that I can be my best self, be my giving self without draining myself. I'm a giver. It hurts for me not to give. It literally hurts for me to withhold love. I try because people in my life will try to get me to stop it. And I had a situation with a former a partner, and I was being supportive, and a friend said, "Why are you doing that?" And I said, "Because I want to, and it is my commitment to leave people whole, and I'll be complete once I do." And so I don't have to justify being good to people, you know,
Mhm.
anymore, and I don't have to pretend like I'm hard. I'm not hard. I'm so soft.
Hmm.
I'm like delicate like a flower, and I'm gonna be that, and I'm gonna be sweet, and I'm gonna be loving. I'm not pretending with you, and I find myself doing that with women too, who want you to do that
Hmm.
dance. Nah, son, you can be uncomfortable. I'm gonna be myself, and it's been really interesting to move about the world like that where people either have to rise up with you or just walk away. And when you stand committed in the light, they just stop messing with you, they leave you alone. And there's a lot of people who
Yeah.
are publicly in the light, public light bearers who have dust on their clothing. And so they avoid you because they know you can see the dirt. And so I've learned to just
Mhm.
realize that that's not actually rejection. That's that person doing their work, and they have a right to go over there and do the work. And I'll be protected and I'll be provided for and I'll get my opportunities in the way they're supposed to come to me. That took a lot of growing up. That's 20 years of work right there.
Man, do you ever find
That's
yourself
20
having
years.
conversations with people who like it's like we used to be close and I really thought it was going to be you and me forever. And then something happens where
Yeah.
like I'm the one that changed. I'm not even I can't even be mad at you because I changed. Like I
Yeah.
grew up, like maybe when I met you, I was looking up to you, and so I was dependent on you, and so maybe you were caring for me, or maybe like we had this dynamic that I can't do
Yeah.
anymore, and certain relationships, it's like they don't shift, and
Yeah.
it's weird for me because, like, I see so much of, like, especially, like, the memes, and even in the name of healing, it seems like the answer to everything, even for, like, therapists are like, "Cut everybody off. Just cut them. Just cut it off. Just cut it off." And, like, that really hurts me, like, I'm not trying to cut anybody off. And, like, so one
Right.
of the things that I really, really sit with all the time is, you know, these times that I've grown and I've switched up on people, and maybe I was talking to them and interacting with them a certain way for 20 years, and I was happy doing that, and I
Mhm.
changed, and I can't
Right.
I can't necessarily be in a daily flow with them anymore. Um,
Yeah.
like, I really, like, uh, but it's so much where I'm resonating with you because for me, like, I've just now started to kinda be okay with, like, it's okay, like, it's not beef, it's not a problem. I
Mhm.
like, I have arguments with these people in my head, and for some reason, they always win. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
just now finally starting to get to a place where I'm like, I don't even know if that's how they feel, and, like,
Right.
like, just being able to
Right.
just
Yeah.
be with the
Yeah.
what isness of all that.
Yeah, and allowing folks to go through whatever it is they need to grow through with regard to your growth and evolution. And sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes it's that your growth reminds them of the growth they're not doing and they just don't want to be bothered right now. And
Mhm.
they have a right to stay in the same place if they want to stay in the same place. And I know I see it amongst some people I really love and I care for. And so I try to be loving when they show back up. I have friends that have reached out to get together and we've been getting together for 2 years, 3 years. They don't really want to get together. We just miss each other. And so I've learned to let
Mm.
it be and we'll link. Some people come back in 5 years or 10 years, 15 years. And I've learned to just be consistent at being me and let everything else fall. It all comes how it comes. I know me making this move was it shook some loved ones who wanted to make a move. Shook them, like shook. And I've had a couple be transparent with me about it. And it is what it is. I have some women who have been very unsuccessful in relationships and project the anti-relationship, anti-marriage, anti-whatever. I've been unsuccessful too, but I'm not anti anything. I'm all about, love. And I'm all about forgiveness. And I had a friend come at me hard because I had made a comment like of being friends about being friends with exes. And they went on this whole superficial tangent about what that craziness is. And I'm like, actually, no, I'm actually friends with two of my ex's wives. They love me too. Right? I'm lovable. My ex will never stop loving me. I'll never stop loving them. We are not together because we're not supposed to be. And that's what grown folks do when you are truly living God's word.
Man, look.
All of that other
My God.
nonsense, it's gone. It doesn't matter. And so my
Mhm.
prayer is that I can mature to the space of being able to have dialogue with those people. Right now, they still piss me off and they put me back in the verge of cuss words, cussing them out. And so I just avoid. But I'm like, yo, it's really, life is too short to not be happy. I don't know what your problem is. And short of the person trying to kill you or beat you, I don't understand. Like, I was there, y'all both had issues, like stop it.
Right,
And
right,
so I'm
right.
in that space now of just really working on deep, deep forgiveness. Um, so I can have peace in my body and in my spirit. And because I did loosen that up during the pandemic, I got forgiveness letter from this dude from 14 years
Oh
prior to
my
2020.
God.
Like
Oh Lord.
14 years later, he wrote me on
Wow.
Facebook the most beautiful, profound, poetic acknowledgement that I wasn't crazy, that I was not crazy. And I always urge people to receive apologies. And yes, it's for the other person, but for me, that let me know that I wasn't crazy in choosing him. I was not crazy. He was just his I saw his light, but I
Mm.
experienced his wound, right?
Mm.
And then 14 years later, he healed his wounds, when he's in this new space. And it's not about reconnecting, but it's about healing that connection. And then we both can move on and live healthier lives. And so that's something too, like I talk about my personal life, particularly in workshop with girls and women, because we carry so much in our chest and in our wombs. And my transparency allows them, and I love it. I love that part of being able to talk because I see their eyes light up and I see their facial expressions, and I know when I'm hitting it, hitting it, hitting it, hitting it. And people are thinking, I talk honestly about healing my relationship with my mom, and I see all these girls in the room like, and there'll always be one or two that come up to me at the end. And you never know what that 2-minute conversation will do to change a person's life. A
Mhm.
2-minute conversation with Susan Taylor from Essence Magazine made me believe I could go to college. It was 2 minutes at a big conference. Diane Carroll held my face in her hands, the actress, and she looked in my eyes and gave me this 60-second pep talk. Changed the trajectory of my whole life. Now, I'm not Diane Carroll, but I'm Toni Blackman. And
That's right.
I
That's right. That's right.
strive to have half of the impact that she had on me. And those moments, but you can't have those moments if you yourself have not healed, if you yourself have not forgiven, if you're carrying around baggage. You're not authentic. You won't be authentic. You won't land as authentic. They won't believe you, but the deeper you heal, the more believable you become and the more souls you touch. I've had so many young men like talk to me very transparently about stuff. And I tell them, look, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a healer, and they just want to be heard in a safe space, and then we move on. And so me healing meant I'm learning how not to take it on, and that it doesn't have to go beyond this here moment. And this moment is the spiritual connection they may need to stay alive, to keep from suffering suicide. You never know. So I think for me, hip hop has brought me this far on this journey. It was like my whole life has been rooted in hip hop. My whole life has been rooted in the cipher. And so as I move through this and I keep going, hip hop is, I won't say it's less significant, but I talk about it less because we grow and we evolve, and there's a different kind of expansion happening in my world. And also, I
Mhm.
find myself passing the baton in some ways with some of the work because I want to do something else. I want to do something different. But each time I do that, I end up in the studio rhyming, and I'm about to finish this project with the spiritual singer, writing bars
You know what's
about the
amazing
love
is
of
like this
God.
idea when you mentioned talking about forgiveness and the acknowledgement. Like an apology really is an acknowledgement of a wrong that happened. And when you said like it was so big because you realized like I'm not crazy, and like this really necessary bond and connection between seeking forgiveness and granting forgiveness. And when we talk about like the way that we relate to each other, like that's actually a really beautiful experience. One of the most beautiful experiences that like sometimes we wrong somebody, or like how many people we start out with, like when we were in the schoolyard, we were scrapping with each other, like we're stealing each other in the face, and then we end up being the best
Yeah.
friends, or somebody wrongs somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And like to connect it to the spiritual
Mm-hmm.
path, one of the things that like when I first got with my sheikh, I felt really
Mm-hmm.
like compelled because in Islam we don't have a need to necessarily like what do they call it? when you admit your sins to somebody. Like when you
Mhm.
say confession, like we don't necessarily have confession in Islam.
Mhm.
But I was talking really,
Mhm.
really like openly with my spiritual guides about this. And one of the things that he said to me is that sometimes when Allah loves a person, Allah allows them to do things that violate the relationship between them and God, because in their desire to repair that, uh, all that's required is to just acknowledge to the creator, not to any person necessarily, unless we've
Mhm.
wronged a
Mhm.
person. But there's times where, like, my behavior,
Mhm.
like I've betrayed the greatness that Allah created me for. Like, Allah didn't create
Mhm.
a petty
Mhm.
person. Allah created a big-hearted,
Mhm.
magnanimous person. And so anytime I'm less than
Mhm.
that, it's like, there's a violation there. And so Allah oftentimes like allows a person to have that experience so that they'll acknowledge, and that acknowledgement is all that's needed. You know what I'm saying? And so there's a
Right.
closeness, there's a
Right.
certain type of closeness that comes from having betrayed, having wronged, having
Right. Right.
experienced a
Right.
deprivation, or having some sort of like we've betrayed our own selves or something like that. And
Right. Yeah.
and one of the things I experienced, like having left America now, is just the deepest wound is the gaslighting of it all. Just the like, no, you're not a slave. No, you're not being raped. No,
Yeah.
your money isn't being stolen.
Yeah.
No, you're not being controlled. No, you're not. Just that, like, there's
Mhm.
no real meaningful acknowledgement of all of the
Mhm.
harm that's
Mhm.
being done on every level,
Mhm.
psychically, spiritually, physically,
Right.
sexually, economic. Like, it's just harm on every level being done. And there's never an acknowledgement of it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
Yeah.
like the idea of
Mhm.
healing is like, where does this even begin? You know, and
Right.
and uh and what you're saying is just so, and this is one of the things is like
Yeah.
that I constantly take inspiration and permission from you, like
Yeah.
in your states of
Yeah.
being. Like so many of the things that you say, like
Yeah.
I'm giving this other person like permission to not grow right now. Like they're not ready to grow right now. And that's
Right.
fine.
Right.
That's their
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
And yeah,
Right.
it's just really profound.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, this next phase of my creativity is about honoring the insights and the life lessons through my art. And I finally figured that out, and I thought I was going to teach these workshops, become a healer. I thought about going to, spiritual science center or the theological summit and all this other stuff. And I realized that's not it. I'm doing what I do, which is I do poetry, I spit rhymes, and I create music, I perform, I coach artists. So it's all happening within the same container. I'm just allowing myself to level up and doing it this time without seeking anybody's permission, without asking for acceptance, without trying to fit into any box in the arts, in the music industry, or in entertainment, but doing what it is that I do. And I think that's also the safe space that I get once I leave America, is that artistically I can be
Mhm.
me. And nobody asked me what I'm doing yet. Nobody asked me how you going to market that. You know what I mean? It's just like I'm doing what it is that I do, and I'm refining it as I do it because I feel free and I'm not caught up in that struggle.
Mhm.
So I'm just looking forward to this year, and as this year flows, what will manifest, because I'm building the muscle to trust the process a little more. Um, I'm building the muscle to have more faith in what I'm being called to do, what's been placed on my spirit, what's been placed in my belly, to give birth to it. And it requires courage, it requires faith, um, and it requires me being audacious enough to have boundaries, because I've been an
Uh-huh.
approval seeker my whole life. I've been an approval seeker, yo. What you think of this? I'm thinking about that. I'm working on this. Really looking for feedback, but really what I want is approval. And
Mhm.
this is the year where I do what I'm doing. I don't want to I don't want to seek anyone's approval. I am trusting my gut. Even the dude that hired me to be a consultant, like I was working on a project, basically, I'm doing A&R and marketing branding strategies for a company, this digital distribution platform, and they're pushing Senegalese music to US market. And then I realized I had these visions and intuitively know that the approach needs to be like this. And so I'm at the point like, no, this is what it needs to be. And how can I speak this with conviction? And the brother that's been helping me, Mustafa, here in the management capacity, he like challenged me. He's like, wait, what's this insecurity? Why haven't you had this conversation? Where's your confidence? And I was like, yo,
Mm.
is he calling me out? And I think that's also the beauty of West Africa and Senegal is truth
Yeah.
telling. The
Yeah.
people close now, people don't do it to strangers, but the people closest to you, oh baby,
Yeah.
you gonna get some
Yeah.
truth and you're gonna get some
Yeah.
honesty, whether it's be you lost, why'd you losing all this weight, or why you gaining all this weight, or why you not eating,
Yeah.
or why you talk
Yep.
person like that, or why didn't you marry him? He was a good man. What happened? What went wrong?
Yes.
You scared of
Yeah.
love? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you say all the
Yeah.
questions, I
No, it's
get
real.
them, and
It's
so he asked me, and he asked me that today, and I was just like, "Yo, you making points? Let me answer tomorrow. I got some work to do, right?" Like he's like, "You the one be preaching. You said life is too short, not be happy." I was like, "You're right." So now I'm in this space. I'm regrouping. I know my mission. I know my spiritual mission. You know, I just give thanks for clarity. It's crystal clear. And I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning and it 3 hours before my alarm. I hated it. But you know, I was up in time. I prayed. I didn't plan on being up, but I prayed and I was able to sit in my clarity. Like, yo, you doing what you're supposed to do. Now do it. Do it. Don't half do it.
Mhm.
Stop letting things get in the way and stop seeking the approval of others. It's been approved. The Most High already gave you the go ahead, the green light. You got studio, you got producers, you got singers, everything you need. Do it. So that's where I'm at, man. I feel so blessed.
Man, well, you've been so generous just over the years, with just your growth and your journey and, your speaking and your teaching and your rhyming and your poetry and just you just being, you know what I'm saying? Like, even if you don't
Mhm.
open your mouth, just being. Like, I remember, I think the last time I saw you, we were watching the twins get down. We were watching Iman and Khadijah doing something, and I just had
Mhm.
an awareness that you were around. Like I could, you know what I mean? Like I could just feel
Mhm.
you before it, because I can't
Uh-huh.
see very well. And once I realized it was you,
Right.
I was like, I knew you were here. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
this next phase is just it's really a beautiful thing to see. It's amazing how in sync we seem to be, that we didn't talk about the fact, because we
Mhm.
almost were like, our family, me and my wife, were either going to move our girls either to the Gambia or to Istanbul. And there's just, a
Okay.
variety of different conversations and things like that. And so we ended up in Istanbul and hope to be visiting the Gambia every year. But
Okay.
it's really incredible. Really, really beautiful. I just
Yeah.
can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
I
So
couldn't love
yeah,
you or
so
admire you
yeah.
anymore, Tony. It's so dope.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I'm really excited. I'll be my first meditation album will be out. The book Wisdom of the Cipher will be out, and this and the African music I'm making. So, yeah, I'm artistically happy. I'm artistically full, and Rhyme Like a Girl is touring Equatorial Guinea, Botswana, and Cameroon in March, and it's gonna be a good year. The year is starting to populate the calendar, and I'll be spending more time here. I go home to New York in a week or so, and then we hit the road, and then I'll be back here for a few months, and then a residency with the Senegalese group Bidibou Bes in Atlanta, and then back here. So it's good, man. It's good.
Man, I couldn't be more happy seeing you like this. It's so beautiful. It's so dope.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toni. I appreciate you.
All right, peace.
All right, salam alaikum.
Okay.
Much love and special thanks to our dear sister Toni Blackman for being so generous and gracious with her time and with her energy and with her wisdom and insight and reflections. It's really, really valuable beyond words. One of the individuals that I want to mention, because he was brought up in this conversation, is Sheikh Amadou Bamba, BAMBA from Senegal. This is a human being that lived a couple hundred years ago, and he is one of the most remarkable stories in human history. Somebody that's not talked about enough. And so I would just really recommend taking a few minutes to go and look up the story of Sheikh Amadou Bamba and know that some of the remarkable things that you encounter in that tale, all signs point to them being true. You hear about miraculous things that happened to him and from him and with him and around him. And many of those stories and those accounts are actually given by the French colonizers who were attempting to enslave him and to capture him. Uh, Truly incredible story. One of the great Islamic scholars and just really embodiments of the Islamic tradition and just the spirit of liberation in the history of the world. So check out Sheikh Amadou Bamba. Always grateful to be in partnership with the Zakat Foundation and BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/travelers is how you get your therapy journey started with them. Special thanks to Amna Mirza, to Mansoor Panawala. Special thanks to Last Word, to Mark from Medina Hip Hop, to Darian Washington, to Ant, who did the music for this podcast. Travelers Podcast is produced by Brendan Kelly, aka BK1, and is a production of Travelers Media. Much love. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon. I pray that you all are well, that you have long lives full of guidance and goodness. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.